We are live. Let's get ready to podcast.
Fire it up.
Welcome back to another live and amplified Indie Fusion podcast. I'm your host, Tom Quiet, and we are back at it again with another amazing podcast. Today, we have a very special guest joining us. We have Nevaeh Dyson. How's it going today?
It's going great. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. It's Monday. Dang, it's only Monday. Okay. Maybe I'm not doing as good as I thought I was. I don't know. So.
Yeah, it hasn't even started yet. Yeah.
Right. It's like I tried to be super positive this morning. I was like, it's Monday. We're going to kick this week off right. And we're one step closer to the weekend. And now it's just like, oh, it's Monday. Sweet. So.
Yeah. The drag has started. Yes.
Right. So how's everything going with you? How's life been treating you?
You know what? It's been really good. I like the spring. I feel like you have this like incubation period over the winter when it comes to music, and then the spring is kind of when you feel things start rolling, and I feel like they roll really quickly. It goes from chill to like everything kind of happens, and I like that. I like being excited about stuff, so the spring's actually been really good.
Nice. Yeah, it's finally starting to warm up here a bit. But I live in the South, so it's like I feel like it's always warm except for like 6 weeks out of the year.
Okay.
So
Yeah. Canada's a little colder, but
Right. So you're on the west coast of Canada, correct?
Yeah, I'm on the West Coast. I'm like in the Okanagan Valley, which is like 4 hours from Vancouver. And honestly, weather-wise, I can't even complain. I think we get to like -15, but it's technically like a desert here, so we get the really hot summers. And I know people in Edmonton and it's like -35. So I just like I'm not allowed to speak in terms of cold weather, really.
That'll happen. That's how it was. That's how it is with my sister. She lives up in near Chicago, and so when I go like, oh man, it's like 15 degrees Celsius or Fahrenheit here.
Yeah.
She's like, it's -32 degrees. Shut up
Yeah.
and go away.
You have to stop speaking and just give her a second. Yeah,
Right.
it's like a dishonor to even speak about the weather if you're from somewhere warm.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up in Chicago, so I'm used to that weather, but it's just like I haven't lived there since 2008, pretty much. So it's like,
Yeah.
it's been a
Yeah.
while. So
It's been a while. Yeah.
how's your music been going? I know it now. You have a new single out, or is it in the process of releasing it? Because I saw you had it on
Yeah.
like your Bands in Town, but then I also saw like a pre-save link, so I was trying to kind of figure that one out.
Yeah. It comes out on Friday,
Mhm.
and I just thought a couple people were like, "Are you gonna put it on Bandcamp?" And I was like, for anybody that has Bandcamp, I'll just put it out early for those people because I feel like Bandcamp's cool. I'd love to
Yeah.
like give it more, attention. And so the
Mhm.
people that use it, they can just listen to it. And but it comes out on everything else on Friday, which is
Nice.
nice. Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Because I was sitting there, I saw the pre-save link first, and then I saw you had like your Bandcamp link, and I was like, okay, well, let me go see what's on your Bandcamp, and I was like, wait a minute,
Yeah.
what is going on? Like, am I
Yeah.
getting up? Yeah. So
Yeah. On Monday, I was just like, you know what? Screw it. I was like, I'm just gonna whatever. I know so many artists that, get to pay their rent because of Bandcamp, and Bandcamp is awesome. And I'm like, anybody that knows the secret of Bandcamp can just listen to it 5 days early.
nice, I love it. And so the name of your new single is two dozen times.
Yeah.
What's kind of the story behind the single?
Honestly, it was like I wrote the single back in like September, October, and I just kind of hit this breaking point. Not all of my music is usually super personal, but I just felt like I tour a lot, so I stay with a lot of strangers. I'm also like a young woman, so I get a lot of people's opinions on me traveling and being alone. And then I hit this point where I've been staying with people, and it'd be like the third or fourth day, and they'd be like, "So, how do you afford this if you don't get paid?" And I'm like, you think I don't get paid? And I've been gone for like a month, and it wasn't me being mad. It was just that feeling of like, you don't understand. And
Hmm.
then I'd come home from a tour and people would be like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, just working." And they're like, "Oh, you finally quit singing then?" And I'm like,
No.
I would never just, I felt like I was getting asked all these questions that you would never feel like you have the right to ask somebody
Hmm.
that maybe is an accountant or a lawyer or a receptionist. Like you just wouldn't ask them those questions because they're considered a little rude. Um, so I just kind of wrote this song about it after feeling a little bit peeved for a while.
Fair. I could, when I was listening to the song, I could, I don't want to say anger because I feel like that might be a
Yeah.
little bit of an aggressive
Yeah,
overstatement,
yeah.
but I could feel the frustration. We'll go with frustration. So,
Yeah, 100%. When I was recording it, the song actually used to be way slower, and way more flowy. And I was recording it, and the producer, Dan Harden, that I do my stuff with, he was just like, "You were frustrated writing this, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Speed it up and like sing it like you're actually pissed off, especially near the end, right?"
mhm,
My friend's an English major, and she's like, "If I was doing a summary of this or analyzing it, it's somebody that's crying for help, and then at the end they're just like, I've had enough. Screw you. I'm going to tell you what my problem is instead of
mhm,
asking you for help."
mhm.
And yeah, I do think it's a I like frustrated music.
Fair. I do too. It's good
Yeah.
times. It,
Yeah.
it's just one of the things where it's like I don't know. I've been in that mood recently where the frustrated music is what I like.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. Yeah.
So um how long has this song kind of been in the works?
This song has been in the works. I wrote it in like September, October, and then I posted a couple of videos of it, didn't really think anything of it, and then was actually building my website and it crashed one day while I was in Victoria. So I had like big cry fest. I was like, ah, and then I just posted this unfinished draft of this song 2 dozen times and it started getting like more attention online than I've ever gotten. And I kept posting it and people kept, either loving it or hating it, which is just how stuff gets attention. But I was like, awesome. So I recorded it. I got mono, which really delayed the release. I was on like the whole steroids trip of really big tonsils. And so I recorded it late January and then got mastered pretty quickly. And then I just kind of gave it like 6 weeks to marinate and do its thing. And I didn't want to push releasing it. And then it'll come out on the 14th before I leave for a tour. So it's kind of been like 6 months with it, which is really nice. It still feels fresh.
Nice. Yeah, it's it's always an interesting conversation to have to kind of find that like turnaround time because I feel like some
Yeah.
musicians it's like, oh, I recorded it 6 weeks ago. I wrote it 7 weeks ago. And it's like,
Yeah.
how do you pull that one off? And then sometimes it's like, oh, I've been sitting on this song, been trying to write this song for the last 7 years. And it's like, that's a
The
completely,
process is, yeah, like so interesting to hear how different it is with everyone. Even
mhm,
in terms of writing, of how they like to produce things, of how long. I have a friend and they're a duo in Edmonton and they're called Jed and the Valentine and they produce all their own tracks, which means they'll sit on them for a year just getting the drums right
mhm.
because they're not paying anyone by the hour. So they're like
Right.
really gonna hone it in.
Which,
Yeah.
like, I mean, there's a set of dedication to like a workflow like that, but at the end of the day, it's like sometimes you just gotta let it go. Gotta let it be what it is. So,
It's totally different with everyone.
mm,
I've This is only my third song I've put out and I'm not used to recording. I like having an audience and I don't love doing all the takes and so it was hard for me to when something's getting mastered to actually and mixed to listen to it over and over and over is hard
right.
for me. It's tricky.
And especially when you're paying so much for it, it's just kind of like, well, I can't just like say I listen to it and say it's good because I'm paying
Oh yeah.
so much money for
Yeah.
it. So it's like, I guess I gotta listen to it.
And
So,
the lingo is so tricky. I remember there's drums on this track. It's the first time I've done drums. We did them live, and what we did is my Dan would just kind of like play different drums, and I'd be like, "Oh, I really like this. I didn't like that." And then he got to the floor tom, and there's this one point in the song where the floor tom goes kind of crazy. And I was like, "Oh, I like that." And he's like, okay. And I'm like, but I want it to feel like, those shawls that grandmas knit
Yeah.
and they have all the holes and they serve no purpose. I was
Yeah.
like, I want the drums in this part to be like that shawl where it like holds you together and it makes your outfit look good. But like if the drums weren't there, I wouldn't be freezing cold. Like my song would still work on its own.
Yeah.
So
That's
like lingo in the studio.
right. S- I'm sorry. That was just a very interesting way of explaining it. Like, I wanted to go in with with the drums that serve absolutely no purpose in this song. Essentially, is how I kind of took away from that.
Yeah, I want him to like I always say I play live and I tour solo. So I need my
Hmm.
songs to be produced in a way that the music, the other instruments or the background vocals amplify the song, but like
Hmm.
the song still stands on its own. I always
Yeah.
hate when I hear something produced and then I go see it live. I'm like, this isn't like stripped down. I'm like, this song isn't the song without the instruments that you had. So knowing I can't afford a band, nor do I want to travel with one because it's so easy to be on my own, I'm like, I need it to just hold its own ground.
Right. Right. It's like I mean that's why I love working with solo musicians because it's like it's just so easy for them to just be like, hey, yeah, Tuesday at 7 works. It's just like you don't got to worry about anybody else. So,
No, it's an easy process. And so many people, it's so funny. They're like, you should play with a band. I'm like, I think everybody loves to have a full sound at times. I just tell them, I'm like, I just don't think, I mean, I play in a duo and even organizing stuff in a duo is brutal. I'm looking at organizing a tour with a duo right now. And
mm,
it's just like, so many timetables. I'm like, do you know how convenient it is to be like, I want to eat like crap while I'm touring, or I want to eat well, or I
mm,
have my grandma, or I'm gonna sleep in my car. There's no opinions.
mhm,
You just go when you want to go. And that is
right,
like such a luxury.
right. I mean, I relate to that so many different levels because it's like we started doing this live podcast thing and to try and book out my co-host because
Yes,
we're in two completely different points in our life. I'm single, no kids. He's married with a whole slew of kids.
that's where it's
And
tricky.
right. And luckily now things have kind of smoothed over because for the longest time I didn't think his wife liked me because I was always the guy that was like taking her husband away to go on these cool road trips, leaving her to watch the
Yes.
kids. And then
Yeah.
finally, it just kind of dawned on me is like, well, that's just because every time we went somewhere, it always seemed like it was while she had the weekend off or like the same days off as my
Yeah.
co-host did. And it was just like, no, that's not intentional. Like, I mean, it is what it
Yeah.
is. But now it's like things are worked out a little bit. But still, it's like, I got to ask them like 6 months ahead of time, like, hey, can we go do this show in like South Texas? Like, yeah.
Yeah, it's so much communication. I was just talking to, I'm playing on the island and there's this venue I've reached out to a million times and they never answered. Then they just DM me the other day and they're like, next time you come, you should play here. And I was like, what? Like, obviously I will, but I was like, oh, but it's so funny because I was saying that to my boyfriend and he's like, well, you can play there next time. I'm like, yeah, so I'll reach out in the winter. And he's like, you wouldn't be playing there till April. I'm like, I know. You just it has to be that far in advance if you want to ensure that you're getting what you want and like can properly communicate with everybody. Like I feel like your brain is always, I'm sure you can relate. I feel like I'm always thinking about next week and getting like this thing done, content from here and this time next year. And if I want to do this thing next year, well, if I'm applying for a grant, that has to be done here. And it's like you're never like planted.
Right. No, I had that moment at work today, like my day job where I do like marketing and commercials and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
the guy, so there's two of us per office in our department, and the guy I share an office with, we were going over like the productions for the next couple of weeks, and he's like, "All right, this is what we got this week. This is what we got next week. This week is pretty set as far as dates. What do we want to do about next week?" I was like, "Dude, next week is like a year away at this point. Like."
Yeah.
As much as I want to say yes, let's do this, this, and this. we've got 20 other things that need to happen before we could schedule those things out. And
Yeah.
it's just like, you just don't know. Like, yeah.
You you can't know anything I think that has any involvement with branding or music or promotion. Like I'm leaving for tour next week and just even getting everything ready in terms of like my merch and making sure, well, I have to pick this stuff up here, which means I need this, and then this has to happen. And then I have somebody that helps me make some of my merch, so then communicate with her. And it's just like you can only focus on what's right in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like it's a tricky balance, and honestly that was so much of writing the song is so many people, especially my age, are in university or college, and I just felt like, generalizing, but their lives
Yeah.
were more scheduled for them,
Right.
right? You have your class this day, you have this, your life is centered around a school or school and work. And I just felt like I was like in tandem everywhere. And I was like, nobody gets it and nobody like respects it. And it's not their
Mm-hmm.
fault because they don't understand. So I'm not mad. I'm just
Right.
like done. Like,
It's like it's one of those things where it's like you're in two completely different points in your life, and not saying that like completely different in a bad way, but it's just like like the understanding of what's going on is completely different. So
yeah, I mean, it carries, right? It's like I'm sure like one person single, no kids, and one person having like a gaggle of children. It's just like you're doing two different routines. So
mhm.
understanding each other, it takes a little bit more.
Right. So this tour that you're getting ready to go on, how long are you going to be out?
I go for about like 3 weeks and
Mhm.
then I come home for a week and then I have kind of one more week long stretch. So I'm in the Okanagan Valley, so it's like if you went 4 hours north of Vancouver.
Mhm.
So for the tour, I do the length of Vancouver Island. I think it's like maybe 8 or 9 hours from Victoria to
Yeah.
Port Hardy, which is like tip to tip on the
Yeah.
island. My family's all from there, and it's my favorite place ever. It's beautiful. If you ever get the chance to go, or if you've been, it's like the best.
Nice.
Um, so I do the whole thing. I do like some breweries, some house concerts, some like art spaces, a couple like sometimes like I get to do like little intimate theaters, house concerts,
Yeah.
right back home, and then I'll do a Vancouver run for like 3 days, and then I'm gonna go play at like an arts walk in Washington,
Oh,
and
nice.
then
Yeah.
yeah, it's this really cool cafe, and I just thought then I'll camp on the coast for like 2 days, then sneak back home.
Nice. I dig it. You know,
Yeah.
it's like I've been trying to get up to camp. Like I'm not going to bore you with my one time I went to Canada trip because it's not that exciting anymore. But
Okay.
my dad was like, "Oh, let's go to Canada," because he worked in Detroit, and we ended up just going across the river to into Windsor, over by like Toronto.
Nice.
And yeah, that
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
that's my big trip into Canada. But no, I've always wanted to like do a nice little run across Canada, but then I realized Canada's as big as the United States, and it would be like,
It's a little run is like a 72-hour drive straight
yep,
across,
yep,
just the
yep.
quickest way.
And in a lot of respects, Canada is a lot bigger than the United States because it's like, at least lengthwise,
Yeah.
because it's
Oh,
just
yeah.
like you go all the way out east and you got the Prince Edward Island, right? Yeah, out
Yeah.
east.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. You've got the Maritimes. I
Yeah.
toured in Newfoundland when I was like 17. I went there and I remember just like even flying, it was like 5.5 hours from Vancouver to Toronto. Then I think like another 5.5 or 7 from Toronto to St. John's in Newfoundland. And
Mhm.
planes that go into Newfoundland actually most of the time can't even land on the first try because it is so windy in the Maritimes that planes have to like circle back around
Wow.
multiple times to land in like the main airport.
Whew. Okay,
Yeah.
that's
But
an
it's
experience.
beautiful. Yeah.
Nice. I I have all these big aspirations, and always felt like the Canada trip would have been the easiest one to pull off. But then again, as I've been doing these podcasts, like I've got a whole bunch of friends in Vancouver. I got a whole bunch of friends in Toronto, Edmonton, over on the East
Yeah.
Coast in PEI, and it's like, boy, man, that's just gonna suck to try and make that all work if I ever go to or whenever I go to Canada. But
Yeah. Yeah,
luckily,
making things. Yeah.
yeah, luckily it's all relatively close to where I'm at. So if like I say, okay, this month we got to go to Vancouver from Dallas to Vancouver, it's not like I'm sure it's probably about 5 or 6 hours, but like that ain't too
It's
bad. So
it it's not too bad. Vancouver and Edmonton, they're so central. Like you're not really having to connect. I don't know. They're beautiful. I mean, I'm biased. They're all beautiful, but BC is
hmm,
very beautiful.
yeah,
And if you go to Vancouver, like take a day trip to the island. There's like small islands around Vancouver Island, and people for like decades have built little ferry houses built into the wood, and you walk onto the ferry, and there's just those like pay and take whatever you want stands. You can pass all the ferry houses. It's like the
nice,
most peaceful thing.
nice. I feel like if I and no offense to anybody in Toronto, I feel like if I were gonna skip at least initially, I'd probably skip around Toronto because I feel like that might be a little bit more Americanized than,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, I think a city's a city, you know?
yeah, right.
Like the towns are where it's at.
Right. And I'm sure I'm going to catch some heat for that one because I've got a whole bunch of friends that live in Toronto and they're like, what do you mean you're going to skip Toronto? I'm sorry, guys. It's,
Toronto's the best ever. Yeah, says the
yeah,
people in Toronto. Yeah.
right, right, right. It's like when the White Sox play the Blue Jays, I'll come to a game. All right. Let's put that out there. So,
Yeah.
but, so you're born and raised in and around Vancouver or?
Yeah, yeah. I was born on Vancouver Island
Mhm.
in Nanaimo, and then I was raised mainly in the Okanagan Valley. So like I grew up in Penticton, which is like a bit smaller, like 20, 30,000 people, and then grew up in Kelowna, which is like a bit bigger. Like I don't know the population, quite a bit bigger. And it's beautiful here. Like my view is the mountains. It's very awesome. It gets like warm in the summer, really cold in the winter. So
Right.
yeah, no
It,
complaints.
I'm guessing it's probably very similar to like I went to Montana in July once, and
Okay.
this and it was like right up against the Canadian border. We were like 20 minutes from the Canadian border,
Yeah.
and we were
Yeah.
visiting a friend. And it was like mid-July. It was like 95 degrees Fahrenheit outside during the day, and we were doing like a bunch of stuff. And we didn't leave until like 1 a.m. And he's like, hey, you guys got like coats and stuff because it's like 36 degrees outside right now. It's like almost freezing out. And I'm like, it's July. What are you talking about? He's like, this is the North, my guy. Like, this is not
It
something you.
can it can ebb and flow. It's like in the valley we're pretty situated, so in the summer it's like 40 Celsius
Mhm.
and gets pretty hot. But the second you go north, like I'll play festivals in like northern Saskatchewan. And I mean, the bugs once you get that north are
Yeah.
like they're not even bugs. They're like rodents, but bugs.
Yeah.
And then it's really hot and muggy, and there's
Mhm.
usually no water source up there in the prairies. And then at night it really cools down. So it's super interesting. Like,
Nice.
I don't know, the landscape here is, as I'm sure it is there, it's
Right.
very different.
Right. I feel like I almost need to take a Canadian like natural history class or something. Just
Yeah.
because like I feel like I've taken like all the American stuff and it's just like I feel like I've missed out on some like really interesting things in Canada there. So
Yeah, they've got if you ever go to Edmonton, they've got a brand new museum. And I went
hmm
while I was playing there in January, and it was like really beautiful. They have the human history part and then more of like the land.
hmm
But they also have a whole section of like the indigenous history with huge like floor to ceiling photography of
oh well.
the places they're talking about. Yeah, and like animal wise too, like if you go to Newfoundland ever, like there are more moose than people in Newfoundland. There are moose everywhere and they eat so much moose. I ate canned moose while I was there. I ate there was just moose. I ate so much moose.
How what did it taste like? I'm curious now.
And here's the thing, I don't really like meat in the first place. Like
Fair.
I don't like meat that tastes like meat, if that makes sense. Like it's got
hmm
to be slathered in like sauce.
Fair.
Um it tasted kind of like chicken. Like it
Okay.
wasn't very fatty.
Hmm.
It was extremely, extremely lean, which I mean makes sense if you've seen a moose,
Hmm.
but it was not that bad. I just didn't like thinking that I was eating a moose because, like,
Yeah,
in my brain, moose are scary.
this is true.
So,
Moose are very
yeah,
scary.
they can
Um,
take you out.
oh yeah, I I've seen plenty of nature documentaries. I see a moose, I'm backing away. Sorry guys, I'll see you guys
Yeah,
later. I'm gone. So,
100%.
right. Um, so growing up, uh, who introduced you to music? Was that like something your family brought you into, or did you kind of find it yourself?
Yeah, honestly, I sang a lot as a kid, and from what I've heard, it was too much for my parents, and my town was small enough that there wasn't a ton of music, but they put me in like musical theater,
Mm,
and I did a lot of dance as like a younger kid, really loved the theater. In high school, super big in theater. I really just loved the storytelling part of it, and I think it definitely influences the way I write sometimes still. Um, but then I think around like COVID, I got really sick and I worked at a retirement home, so I had to quit my job and I couldn't go back for a while. So
mm.
I took all my like high school savings and bought a guitar and an amp and started busking. And then kind of how like my influences came into play. Like my family isn't super musical, but they really encouraged it
Nice.
when they saw it. And then people would see me playing covers. This is before I even wrote music, and they were like, "You remind me of Jewel. You remind me of this person." And then I'd look at them, and if I really loved them, I'd get into it, and that kind
Mm,
of like chugged forward what really inspired me to write.
nice.
Yeah.
And so while you were busking, you were probably primarily doing like cover songs, right? Like when you started busking and all that,
Yeah.
or
Yeah, only cover songs. I actually used to like really hate writing music when I started. I started writing because I wanted to play more places, and
mm,
it's quite musical here once you really dive into the scene. And everyone else wrote songs, and so I was like, oh, like, hey, like I'm gonna try to write music. And it was daunting because when I wrote songs, I played them for people kind of right away because it was just like I was already playing venues, so I was just testing out my like first kind of songs ever
hmm.
um, on people. And I only feel like it's been in the last year that I've actually found kind of like my footing and, you know, kind of what my vibe is. I think it
Yeah,
takes a while to actually figure out what your sound is because you
yeah.
start playing around so much.
Was there a moment that you realized like, hey, this is the sound, or was there like a song you were listening to, or was it just kind of like you found yourself writing more to a certain style and you were just kind of like, yeah, this is
Yeah,
what I am.
it was for me, it was Jewel. It
Okay.
was the Who Will Save Your Soul and then um Goodbye Alice in Wonderland, like the bridge bit of it where she's speaking. And the reason was just like I really like songs that send a message and they kind of send it in a harsh way in terms of like they take what you're thinking and they slap it right there and you just have to like accept it and listen to it and it makes you think and spark a conversation. And I love that, and I kind of love that speak singing thing mixed with
Mm,
like really dynamic vocals. Like
hmm.
that's a huge inspiration for me is when you can like tell a story. I've been writing kind of a lot of like choppy, almost like spoken word stuff lately, but then still pound through with like these really cool, like sick
Yeah.
vocals.
And
So, yeah.
and you were doing that with your most recent single as well, right? Because I feel I
Yes.
was picking that up pretty hardcore, and I was like, oh, this is really cool. So,
Thanks. Thanks. It took me, it was just things that like I didn't realize you could do, And
mm,
like I love that. I love like Annie DeFranco. Like she's got
mm,
a song Fuel, and it's kind of like that where it's just like I like when people just speak their truth, and especially when you hear women kind of like almost rapping in folk music and it's spoken, and I just
mm,
think it's like it's pretty cool. I just think it's like it makes me very happy. I like when you can kind of almost mix the mediums, and that's kind of what really set me in on my style, that like speak singing,
yeah.
and then you go all out, and then
Oh
you
yeah.
chill out again.
Oh yeah, for sure. It adds a lot of dynamics to the song and the performance, and it almost is like are you still with me? Like it picks up and it's like just
Yes.
making sure that people are still with you. And like when I was listening to 2 Dozen Times, um, I was listening to it this morning because I finally figured out that it was up on Bandcamp, and I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I can listen to this song." Because that's always kind of the hard conversation to have. Is like, how do we talk about a song that I haven't heard yet? And I just
Yeah.
gotta ask the questions and just hope I can latch onto something. But the one thing that really drove me about 2 Dozen Times is just like I brought out the frustration earlier, mentioned that you sounded very frustrated in this, but then there was just like these dynamic moments where it was like here, your level, and then you just pick it up and then it just comes right back down. And it's almost like, oh, she's saying something without saying something. Like, because
Yeah.
it was very interesting where those moments would happen. And it seemed like during like the most frustrating parts of the song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I love getting to use the power of your voice. And I think somebody that I grew up in so much musical theater. I
Mhm.
love it. It feels almost like when you have a musical and there's the speaking and then there's the big song and then there's, another scene. And that's kind of how I like the music to feel. Um, I remember I showed it to my boyfriend and very supportive, and he's like, yeah, yeah, it really punches really hard at that chorus, hey? And I'm like, that's how I want it, man. Like, I love that,
Right?
It's just
Yeah.
like, yeah,
It,
yeah,
it
and thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as more people listen to it, because it's like I feel like you've got to be a real really into like independent music to kind of go as far as to be on Bandcamp. But like once it
Yes.
comes out on like Spotify, iTunes, and all that stuff,
Yeah.
it's just like I think it's going to really grab people at that chorus where it's just like
Thanks.
okay. And I think that like if you promo it right, as like especially as it starts catching when it releases, I feel like this is something that would really work on TikTok as like obviously I'd let you kind of figure out how to incorporate it on TikTok, whether it's like a dance or
Yeah.
a trend or whatever it is. I'm not good at TikTok, so I'm going to stop pretending like I know what I'm talking about. But like,
Me neither.
I just feel like this song would be a really good song on TikTok. Like, if you could figure out like a
Ah,
thing that would work, you know?
thank you. Yeah, it's cool. I've like since posting it, I've had a couple like artists do edit. I've had like hairstylists, like visual artists, and they'll film them doing their art with the
Mm-hmm.
song playing, and it's cool to see it relate across different mediums is like
Hmm.
super rad. I did this like kind of online there's like a program here, Music BC, and you can take kind of like free courses with
Hmm.
people, and I did one on marketing, and he talked about essentially something I hadn't realized. He's like, not every song is meant to grow your audience. Some are meant to strengthen what you have, and some are meant to rope in new people. And so this song's beautiful because unintentionally it ropes in new people because I think the
Yeah.
feeling of being undervalued is very universal,
Hmm.
especially being creative or running something on your own with creative people like, and it's not that people disrespect you, it's just that like they don't understand because it's not what we're programmed to go into currently in like
Right.
our society.
Right. It's one of those things where it's like you said, so many different people can relate to it, whether it's a small business owner, whether it's a service provider, a artist, a music, like whatever it is. There's just so many people that can relate to it, where it's like I had to cut my teeth somehow. It just like, yeah, I don't know. It just hits on so many levels. So,
Thanks. Yeah, it's I really like it, and I grow to like my songs more with time. The more I hear other people interpret it, the more I actually feel like I'm like, I didn't even intentionally do that, but I'm like, it's super cool that that's how it comes across because like the point of me creating music is for other people to make them think. I love music, but I didn't write it always growing up for myself. Like I do it for the connection of actually getting to share it with people. So I do like when it actually relates to people as well.
100%. So, you're a couple or little like 3, 4 days away. I'm trying to do math in my head, but it's just not going to fly. You're coming up on the official release of 2 dozen times on Spotify and iTunes. What's kind of running through your mind right now as you kind of reach one finish line, but hit a starting, completely different starting line?
Yes. Yeah, you know what? I'm really stoked. This is the first song that I've actually been genuinely really excited to release. My first two songs I was just kind of releasing because I love playing live and I was like, I want to apply for grants and play more stuff live and I just need material out. So
Mm,
it was more like a job and this one's just more like I'm just really excited because I've kind of started building this little online community because of this song and they've only heard this one small clip of it, kind of
yeah,
like over and over. And I'm just really excited for people to hear it and hopefully connect it all into like one cohesive piece. And hopefully it'll hit harder. Um, I'm excited too, like when the song's released, I'm gonna keep working on teasing it. I mean, the beautiful thing about touring on the West Coast is I just have so many beautiful
mm,
places to go to the beach alone and film myself, playing or doing the tedious thing of just lip syncing to my
mm,
song over and over and over and over, which is not my jam, but is other people's jam.
right. Honestly, the one thing that's been really interesting to me is, and I mean, this would have probably been something that would have been better to start like when you first announced like the pre-save link and all that stuff,
Yeah,
but just doing like normal videos, like Instagram videos or whatever, where it's like you're talking in the back or in your car, or, like whatever, like
yeah,
a normal Instagram video would be, and just underlaying the instrumental to this track. So you're subconsciously preparing people
yeah.
for a song.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, that's super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And so then when they hear the instrumental, it's like, oh, okay, there's like a level of familiarity with it. And even though they've never heard the song before, but that instrumental track is just kind of like, okay, it's up here. So,
it's it's totally that subconscious thing, especially like when songs you think go viral on like TikTok or Instagram through this like the sound.
hmm
Somebody can never hear your name, but if they've heard that song on enough audios, and then I've had people follow me and they'll comment and they're like, "Oh my God, I've been hearing this sound on a bunch of people's videos, and you're the one that sings it." And I'm like, "Well, I didn't know that because nobody tagged me, but I'm really glad that you heard it."
right. And
And
that's the unfortunate part about like TikTok and Instagram is if it gets like reused over and over again, it kind of gets like the original artist's name kind of gets lost
yes,
in
there's
the
so many, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, covers and reworks. I was going through today just making sure because I work independently, even just all the different kinds of
Mm-hmm.
streaming rights, right? Because
hmm
you've got like your DistroKid or your CD Baby, but then you want to make sure that you have your radio play rights and your performance rights. And as a Canadian, it's a company that you use here, and then you have to do it's like the whatever MLC something here and then the CMM whatever one for there. And it's just funny because it's like you don't have to do it. And although the money you're getting is so small, but it's like if you go with every service,
hmm
it's a little bit less small.
Yep.
Um, But yeah, the whole thing's just interesting. I do wish like they had some way that like automatically when you clicked on the sound, it like showed the sound and the actual artist. Like you could just
Yeah.
click on their account and find them.
Yep. I'm and I think originally that was the intent, but I feel like so many people just kind of reuse it and then they are like, "Oh, I like this audio," but then it gets saved as their audio and you kind of get cut out of the mix,
Yes.
but you
Yeah,
know.
it's super tricky and like with every art medium and I think that's why, a lot of art's so undersold. I mean, even think like podcasts and music on streaming
Mhm.
services, people pay $10 a month. And so then when they go see a live podcast show or, a music and show and somebody's like the ticket's $25 or like, what? What? That's so expensive. But it's because you don't have to pay really. Like Spotify feels free when I'm only
Mhm.
paying $10 a month. And
Right.
photography, I have a friend that's a photographer and she just posted on her Instagram. She's like, "Oh my God, who took these photos of Pamela Anderson on Vancouver Island? They're beautiful." And she looked for 30 minutes. Took her that long to
Mhm.
find the photographer because she wasn't tagged.
Right. But
Yeah.
like, I mean, that's a whole, we could go down a whole different rabbit hole on that one because it's like, I 100% get where you're coming from on that one. So, but I did want to go down this rabbit hole because I feel like it's an
Yeah.
important one. It was, so I had somebody on the podcast about 3 weeks ago, maybe getting close to a month. And she had brought up a really interesting point that I hadn't thought about. When you're out, because you're getting ready to go out on tour, when you're out playing shows, do you submit your set list to like ASCAP or BMI?
Yeah. So here in Canada, it would be SOCAN.
Yeah.
And I submit to SOCAN when I can. To be honest, I really didn't. I just started again.
Hmm.
Because you can get a pretty good amount of money per show. And with SOCAN, it depends on how many original songs you're using, and then like the other artists get their rights.
Hmm.
But here, like the venues have to be, I was just looking at this the other day, so I'm
Yeah.
actually happy you asked because I know they have to be like registered with SOCAN. Not every venue is, but like legally you're supposed to be if you're a music venue.
Hmm.
You're supposed to be registered because you're supposed to pay the lump sum of the royalties that you're like are occurring in your
Yeah.
space, and then
Yeah.
SOCAN pays through that. The real question is, does everyone do that? Which I'm going to be learning on this tour
Mhm.
as I submit my performance rights to SOCAN. It's
Right.
very, very rare that I go to a venue and they actually are like, we use SOCAN.
Hmm.
Usually they do, but they don't even know that they are or what
Hmm.
SOCAN is.
Right. It's one of those things where it's like, because I was talking to somebody else, he runs an independent wrestling promotion and he deals with the same thing with ASCAP and BMI because they use like um music for like entrance themes and all this different stuff.
Yeah.
And he's had like ASCAP and BMI reach out, be like, "Hey, I saw you using my art or our artist's song. We want to get paid." And with him, it's a little bit different because I'm sure he has to have some, if he just got an ASCAP BMI license, it would cover everything and you'd be good. But he's got like a technical loophole because technically it's the wrestler's like theme song. So they're all he has to say is, "Oh, I got it from this guy. He said he had the rights to use it, so go after him." And
Yeah.
it's like, I get
It's
it, but yeah.
it's so confusing and it's hard because if you're a brewery, unless you're a dedicated music venue,
Hmm.
chances are you're probably thinking about running your business and not about SOCAN,
Hmm.
or any of the other and like companies. And I totally get that. And it's hard to like play somewhere and they don't know what SOCAN is. And then I'm like, do I get my performance rights? Like
Right.
it's easier to just email SOCAN, which is what I'm gonna do soon. This is a good reminder. And you just send them all the venues and they'll check if they're registered or if they're
Hmm.
paying. And then you just know. And then if they're not, it's not like you reported them, but they'll check anyways and make sure and maybe reach out and say, I see you're having music 4 days a week.
Yeah.
Um, maybe let's get on those
Those were
royalties.
right. Because
Yeah.
it's one of those things where like I don't know how it is in Canada, but I know especially like in the States, if even if you're playing music like on the
Yes.
radio or whatever, you still have to have an ASCAP BMI SOCAN license.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. And you have to report like this is what I was learning too, because what confused me is I'm like, why do I have to sign up to like 80 different royalties
right.
places to get my royalties? Like, why can't I do it through just one company? And so it took like a couple hours of like very intense frustration on my part to figure it out. But SOCAN does performance rights and they also do radio. So what it is that any kind of radio, right? Like college radio, city, whatever,
Hmm.
when they put their songs on, they have to log them all down and they have to send those lists in to a royalties
Hmm.
place, usually SOCAN here, so that they can pay people accordingly. And that's like a
Yeah,
legal thing.
yeah,
Again, I'm sure not everyone does it. Like, I'm sure there are radio stations in towns with a
yeah,
population of 500 that just like do their thing. And like, that's totally fine. But I didn't know about royalties until so recently.
yeah.
I was wondering honestly, like, what when people have labels in management, like what all these roles are and what they do.
right. And
Because, yeah.
it's a thing. But what I was saying earlier was it's like the vent. Like let's say you go to a coffee shop after our interview or whatever, and to go get a
Yeah.
coffee. If they're
Yes.
playing music, even if they don't have live music in general, if they're
Yes.
just playing music, they still have to pay ASCAP
They have to
BMI.
pay.
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
isn't the radio station or whatever pay? Like, I don't know.
It's,
It's
I still don't understand it from there. And boyfriend's in business school, and I was explaining it to him, and he got that deep into the rabbit hole. And I was like, pause, I haven't gotten there yet. I got confused and my head started hurting. I know that they pay. I don't know
right.
how and I don't know why. And I don't know
But
who pays.
you know what? I think more people need to know that because it it does several different things. Like Spotify, yes, that's one way to do it. Like you're gonna get a penny for every 500 streams or
Yes.
like whatever it is, right? Okay, cool, but at least you're getting a little bit. You Then you put the emphasis on your live shows and you're submitting your live sets so you can get your performance rights. And that's going to give you a little bit of money, which that's cool. And then you start focusing on like radio and doing that, and that's going to give you a little bit of pull. And it's like
Yeah.
that, like it once you kind of set up all the faucets and just kind of like, okay, I know I'm getting this much from here, there, then you can kind of figure out, okay, I'm making a little bit of money. Yes, it's not a lot, but it's working. So,
It's nice to know that legally there are ways that you are supposed to get paid. The only thing
mhm.
is that they don't really always educate on it. Or it's like a little bit of a well-kept secret. Like I know I forget what the program's called in America, but there's a singer that I love that's based in the States. His name's Philip Labes, and he just put this thing up. In the Grammys, I guess Chapel Roan made this speech about,
Yeah.
labels treating artists better and
Yeah.
not having health care. And he put this thing up and he said, actually, there is health, like there are healthcare programs, like, and like that for artists in the States. He goes, but you have to go out and find it. Like they don't advertise that they're there. And I looked it up and there's one for Canada too,
Hmm.
which I didn't know. And so like I can get, I think it's like free, it's like preventative health. So like eyes, teeth is covered through like TELUS Health. My counseling's covered. I don't know another musician that knows about it because you have to go deep down the rabbit hole, but it's just nice to know that there is like support in a sense. It's just like frustrating that
Dig.
you have to try so hard to find it.
Right. Man, that's good to know, but so frustrating at the same time.
Yes, because
So,
the companies are so small and overrun that they don't have time or money to put into promoting themselves. So they just keep themselves running for the people they have.
right.
So,
100.
but yeah,
Sweet. Hey, it's a thing. So, so kind of looking forward, you got your new single dropping on Friday, right?
yeah,
Friday. I don't know why. My brain is just like,
a
it's
long
so,
week.
yeah. And it's only Monday. So, you got your new single dropping on Friday. You got a exciting tour coming up, which going out on the road, it's got to be fun, right? Like it's good times.
It's the best. And when I'm on the island, I take so many ferry boats and the people are great. I sometimes I miss being at home, but I love going away and playing. It is so rewarding.
Yeah, I love it. It's just something about it. I don't know. I get where you're coming from on that one. So it's like
Yeah.
you come home after a long, hard like tour or road trip, and like the first 2 or 3 days, it's like okay, this is relaxing. Like I'm down, but then at like that fourth day, you start to miss it, where it's like, I need to get back out there. I need to go do this. You know.
Oh, you start planning the next one. My buddies in Edmonton, I just told them, I'm like, I'm coming up in June. Can we do a run of shows together? And they're like,
Right.
yeah. And they're like, we're coming down in August. Can we do a run of shows together? I was
Right.
like, hell yeah.
Yeah, it's just like it's contagious and in the best way. So
Yes. Yeah.
I love it. But I don't want to keep you here too much longer because I know you just got off of teaching music class and all that fun stuff. So, if anybody wants to check out your music, social medias, shows, schedules, all that fun stuff, where's the best place to find you?
My music, I'm on like, I mean, I don't know. I go through DistroKid, so I'm on like Spotify and Apple Music and
Mhm.
all of the things, the names I don't know. I should be on all this stuff. I have a website which is just nevaehdyson.com if you're ever looking at live shows or just like more about me. And that links to all my stuff. But I'd say like I'm pretty active online. My Instagram I post on every couple days. My TikTok I post on every day. My Spotify got another song I'm sitting on that's with my duo partner that we're releasing
Nice,
just whenever we feel like it, maybe in April. But yeah, I'm on all the social stuff and
nice,
I don't know, they all co-post. I don't understand how it works, but it always goes out to everything.
nice.
So
I love it. I was gonna ask if you had more music coming, but I was like, no, 2 dozen times isn't even out yet technically, so we won't go there. So,
no, you're good. 2 dozen times and then yeah, I have like a really silly song with a whole speaking break with my duo partner just about being in a relationship and embarrassing yourself a
all
lot
right,
by trying to do stuff and you just, mess everything up. It's just I embarrassed myself in front of my new boyfriend and we wrote a song. So
fair.
it's silly.
I dig it. It's those silly moments that make for the best, right?
You know what? It totally is. And it's nice to be embarrassed and then be like, you know what? It's art now, so it can't be embarrassing anymore or as embarrassing.
Right. For sure. Well, I mean, I guess it could still be embarrassing depending on what it was, but the fact that you turned it into art, it couldn't have been that bad.
Oh yeah, I introduce half my songs and I'm like, this is a song about how I peed in a cup and scratch that and it's about women's rights, but it started with the peeing in the cup and it's
Nice.
important to tell the process.
Right. I agree. 100%. But once again, thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute blast chatting with you. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and we will catch y'all later.
Yeah, thank you.